I want to thank you for checking out another podcast of We Ain't Scared Talk. My name is A1, and we ain't scared. On today's show, well, first let me say Happy Black History Month. Right, let me just first say that. I think this is, well, not I think, this is February 23rd. It's the last Saturday in February. So happy Black History Month. Hopefully you've gone out, you've done some researching on some people other than Malcolm and Martin, and you've dug deep to find out about somebody, about Black legends that have come before us all, that have sacrificed their life, sometimes even their family, so that a better life can be created for a generation that they, unfortunately for most, never got to enjoy. So happy Black History Month. Now, also on today's show, I do have a special guest. It's a brother that I admire tremendously. He's a smart brother, and he's got a lot of good insight and good knowledge for the topic that we're going to be discussing. And thanks to everybody that's checked out the podcast up to this point. I think we're up to about 9 or 10. You can get on over to We Ain't Scared Talk on YouTube. You can follow on IG at We Ain't Scared Talk. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in to today's show. And it is, does the Black church enable white supremacy? Does the Black church enable white supremacy? Yeah, so I have on the phone with me my good friend Remy. Okay, Remy, say what's up.
What's up, y'all? How y'all doing out there? We're happy to be here. You know, my brother A1. I appreciate you having me on the show, man, to talk about this real talk, man.
No problem, bro. No problem. I respect you. And I think this particular topic is something that, especially for the Black community, and it's deep. And let me also qualify. We're not the first to have this conversation. Okay, let's just be fair. You know, sometimes people get on the mic or they get on these shows and they think, oh, I'm the first one to ever, come across this as a problem. Right?
Yeah,
right. There's nothing new under the sun. Okay.
Right.
And, just like oppression has been around since the beginning of time. I dare say cavemen have their type of oppression, right?
Right.
But to make it relevant to this generation, right, and where we are, it's important that these voices and these conversations are had, because it's a litmus test, right? You're checking your own temperature and making sure that it aligns with whatever your personal, spiritual, beliefs are at this point in human history. Is that fair?
Fair. That's fair.
Okay. And just, so everybody knows, I always I do keep it real. And before this conversation even started, this was off air or off the mic. Remy and I had a conversation, and we were going to talk about something completely different. Right, Rem? We had a completely different topic.
In other words, he pulled a whammy on me, people. He pulled a whammy.
Right? See, he was, and in all fairness, he was prepared. He had his thoughts, he had his notes, and I apologize, my brother. I didn't mean to throw you off, but I just go with a feeling and whatever's hitting my spirit and my mind. And so, in all honesty, when I told him the topic, does the Black church enable white supremacy? What was your reaction, man? What did you say?
Just to keep it 100 with the people, man. I, as a Christian man myself, these are issues that I'm still battling internally. And so I still need clarity. So I'm not necessarily comfortable to talk about these particular issues personally. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the problem with where we stand as a Black church community. I mean, as we know, there's a lot, and shout out to all my believers out there that have a firm foundation in Jesus Christ. But it's just one of those situations where you're just like, God, this is so hard for me to look at. How can I raise my children in this world and in this society, knowing that there's a lot of unanswered questions. And even with those, and let's just say even if those questions get answered, will that change the situation? Where's my level of responsibility or accountability to my family, to my child, to my wife, if I'm supposed to be ministers of my home, but yet it seems like, you know, the place where we gather, the church, is failing us on a daily basis.
Wow.
So,
that was a great setup, man. Go ahead.
You like that? You like that? All right.
No, it was good. It was honest. Go ahead, and then I'll make my point. You know, to open up the conversation, right? I will open it up. But go ahead, finish.
Absolutely. But I would say what has given me freedom from this situation, I mean, it still doesn't negate the fact that these are still relevant in, you know, issues that are still taking precedence today. I would say I have to look at it from the lens of a spiritual man. And when I say a spiritual man, I have to realize I'm a spiritual being first. I'm not a human being. I'm a spiritual being that's living in a human catalyst body. So therefore, that doesn't necessarily mean we can't change our environments or our atmosphere, because that's what we were put on this earth here to do. That's our whole potential purpose is to preach the gospel. But we have to be strategic in how we're preaching the gospel in an effective way to where it's really changing our communities, so that way we can have the unity that we so desire. Now, is that going to take a lot of work? Absolutely, it's going to take a lot of work. But going back to my original saying of me being a spiritual person, I have to realize we're living in a fallen world. So what may be right in this community may be wrong in another. So, you know, I mean, even Jesus, when he was ministering and doing his thing, he didn't travel very far. If you notice, if you look at the context of all the, you know, from Nazareth to Damascus and all these different cities and places that he was going to, Jesus didn't travel the world. I think that's just been this preconception, like Jesus was in China and in Africa and in Europe and all that other kind of stuff. No, he just was able to be effective in his own environment, and then he gave his disciples a responsibility.
Right, go out and be fishers of men.
Nation. Right,
mm-hmm.
right.
Nation building.
And so, unfortunately, since that time has happened, there's obviously been major perversion of the gospel, major misconceptions of the gospel, major misunderstanding of the gospel itself. A lot of people just going off of head knowledge, but not the spiritual context. I mean, people just justify the way that they want to live based on the way that they want to live, and now people don't even believe in God. I mean, we just see all these different layers of what has happened because our I don't want to say lack, but I would say our lack of fervence to really knowing God's heart, to really knowing God in general, and just really knowing his desires for his people and how we can be effective in our community. So.
Okay. All right, Pastor. Good Reverend Doctor. I'm gonna be listening for that Hammond beat, organ in a minute. Wow.
Give me E flat.
Give me an E flat, right? But let me do this because I feel like you and I we're on our sensibilities are we're at least in the same neighborhood, right? Yeah. But let me qualify because I know sometimes when people listen to people talk about a particular subject matter, the immediate thought is, well, what gives you the right or the authority? What is your background, right? Why should I take what you're saying to heart, right? Now, number one, we're human. Number one, all right, first and foremost. Number two, we're black men, right? Number three, we grew up in the black church, right? Now, that in and of itself should be enough. Now, some people may say, well, it's not. Did you go to a school of theology? Right? Yeah, it was called growing up in the black church. Everything that black pastors learned at the school of theology or a school of theology, they shared with their black congregation. From the Greek to the Hebrew to the Latin. You hear that a lot on Sunday mornings. This word means this, and the Greek is that. But more importantly, just so we can get down to it, I grew up. My dad is he's a minister, so I'm a PK, which is probably why I'm such a heathen. But we started off Baptist, right? There was an exposure to. I knew a lot of. We had relationship with Pentecostal churches, okay, and this is from Indiana, just so that some perspective from Indiana and Los Angeles, and then Church of God in Christ was where we rested, if you will. See, in terms of our Christian faith, and then there was some non-denominational background for me, right? There was exposure for me to a bishop who I'm not going to name, who had one of the biggest megachurches, okay, in Los Angeles. Okay, I saw behind the curtain. Okay,
right,
and we're talking about several thousand. If it wasn't the number one, it was the number two biggest megachurch in LA. Okay,
right.
So when I speak and I say things, it's not a theory. It's not you saw something on TV or in a movie or you heard. No, I'm speaking from a position of I was an eyewitness, right, to this. And fast forwarding to today, I'm feeling like the very thing that I was trained, taught, shown to put my faith in, which God ultimately, right? But the institution, okay, there has to be some accountability of the institution, which there is none. And so let me just tie this, and I want to get your response. When I say, does the church, the black church, enable white supremacy? Let me define enable. You turn a blind eye when one of your parishioners is killed. And when I say blind eye or deaf ear, there might be a little outrage about it on Sunday morning. But when I say the black church, I'm talking about at large, right? The Church of God in Christ has 13,000 churches around the world, right? The denominations as a whole, if you are a Baptist, a Pentecostal, a Church of God in Christ, whatever your black dominant church is, as a whole, should rise up, in my opinion, and stand and say this racial discrimination, police brutality is going to stop, or we're going to take steps because we have business owners, we have athletes, we have CEOs in our congregations. We're going to take steps to organize and stop it. So, so with that, let's hear about your, sort of your backstory and your response there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I agree with you 100%. So my background is also, both of my parents are ministers. I grew up in an apostolic Pentecostal church. I'm talking no makeup, no jewelry, skirts down to your ankles. I know some people talk about the open toe shoe thing. That wasn't an issue with the stockings. Even women shaving was kind of not necessarily considered a bad thing, but it was one of those things where it was just looked at. That's one of the only allowances that you had, and the only jewelry that you could really wear was your wedding ring. But makeup, if makeup was like drawing attention to yourself, just because we want to live a meek, humble life, and I mean, that came from a lack of understanding of what that truly means. But I mean, I came from a very Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday church. Every day was church. Every day was something. Like every Wednesday was church. Every Monday night Bible, Wednesday night Bible study, men's Bible study, youth Bible study,
Thursday night,
all everything. Shut in, our prayer service, whatever. And I mean, I went to a church where, nowadays kids got it good. You know what I mean? The church that they came from, where church was max hour and a half, 2 hours to that's what we're doing today. But back then, it was like a job. Like we got to church at 9, I didn't get out till 5.
Right.
And that's not even including if another church came to visit. We was gonna be there all day.
Right.
I'm talking all day church.
Yeah.
So I grew up in that, man, and so I can attest to what you are saying, my brother. And literally, I mean, it was just, we weren't really talking about the goodness of God, the grace of God. It was just more the fear of God. You had to make sure your heart was right and that you weren't doing anything wrong, and just, that whole simple nature of not going to hell and just making sure our hearts was right about going to heaven.
However, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well,
okay, but
go ahead. I'm sorry, dog. It's like
No,
it's spilling out of my mouth here. Go ahead. I'm a horrible host,
yeah,
man. Go ahead.
no, it's cool, man. But as I begin to get older, I begin to realize, like, man, like, this ain't no way to live, man. Like, I don't like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a kid, you begin to realize, like, okay, you're just doing what you're told. Like, there was, it was like literally anytime I wanted to do something, there was always a scripture for it. Like, literally, like, if I wanted to swim, I was supposed to mix bait. If I wanted to go to the movies, are you going with another girl? Not another girl, but are you going with the opposite sex? You know what can happen. And I'm just like, man, like, I just want to go with my friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a kid, so I'm not even thinking about it from that perspective.
Right.
But I felt like because of that fear, it made me want to do those things because I wanted to see what was on the other side.
Right. Exactly.
I'm keeping it up.
Well, and I think,
go ahead.
No, I think that's the biggest issue, right? Fear.
Yeah.
Right. And excuse me. You stepped into something that I feel like is a part of the enabling of white supremacy. I'm gonna always bring this back to the topic, and as much as possible. If they teach you to fear the very thing that is oppressing you, how are you ever going to conquer it?
Right. That's a good point. That's a good, solid point, my brother.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. Man, that's the truth. That is the truth. And we're also taught, based on the word and based on, the biblical text that, the only way that we can overcome is through Jesus Christ. So, I still firmly believe that to this day. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that I haven't been able to overcome until I hand it over to God. Now, how do we relate that to the natural? When we look at our politics, when we look at our situation in the education system, the white supremacist, the elitist type of system, what do we call it? There's a word that they call it. They call it is it communist? Is it communist kind of? That whole system.
The system.
That communistic.
Communism. Yeah, communism.
So, that communistic mentality by being a believer, being in the faith. I think a lot of these issues, man, has never really been brought up in the church, and I think the church was so unprepared. We're so prepared for the afterlife that we've never been prepared for the present life. And
you know what I love about what you just said? Because the way I interpret it is, they're preparing you to die, not to live. Fact.
And the Bible strategically doesn't talk about that. Like the Bible is about kingdom. So when it's about kingdom, it's about dominion, ownership. I heard Miles Monroe say, just as much, like, if you don't like the problems that's going on around you, we're the ones in control. Why would it say it? If God has given us the same power, if He's given us the same authority, then we command. If we want that mountain to move, then we can command it to move. Why are we waiting on God to do it? And I think that's what we've been preconditioned to believe. So when we've been preconditioned, even as black men, it's almost like, where's this, white, savior man in the blue Superman outfit with the red cape to come and save all the people from bondage and tribulation and like, wow, that mentality, and I feel like that's still plaguing us today, that we don't even realize our own power that we have. We don't even realize how we're the most mimicked, copied people. If you look at society, we know that hip-hop is the number one genre in regards to sales and records in today. So that shows that we have power. We have dominion as a people. This is me speaking outside of the spiritual context. This is on the natural, color, melanated brother side. I'm saying that every situation, every issue that we face as a people, we've been able to overcome. That's a fact. We know that. I also heard in context of how our people, because we're naturally, even in the biblical times, the Bible talks about how our people, as melanated people, have been the ones been able to endure hardship for so long. That's the reason why the Anglo-Saxon or the European people love to connect to us. Even when we go back to the Moors the Moor community, the Black Moor community, when they actually, in order for them to get, when they was expanding westward from out of Europe, when Christopher Columbus was navigating westward, he didn't know how to navigate westward. He actually was in connection or in communication with the Moors, which was a Black, highly intelligent community of people that taught them how to navigate the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I said that to say this. It was to build up the premise of our people has been everywhere. We are everywhere, and we have the knowledge and the understanding. Now, the problem is sometimes, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, we've lost that confidence. We've lost that sense of self. We've lost that sense of self-confidence, and just in who we are and who we are as a people. We've been taught to believe what other people or other communities or groups say about us versus us even trying to figure out who we are within ourselves. And we see that taking precedence today. We see the let's look at the school system.
Well, before you do that, because you said a lot, right? I know.
I'm sorry. I don't take it. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Because I really want to try, because I know this is all, there's a lot of layers. And one thing leads to another thing, which leads to another thing. And there are a lot of rabbit holes in this conversation. But as far as the Black church, right? The first question is, does forgiveness work against us? That's number one, right? Because when I think about white supremacy and when I think about what it has done to us as a people and how we have been taught to love our enemy, right? Turn the other cheek. Vengeance is mine, right? Right. As I am growing and evolving, I'm not convinced that forgiveness is not causing us not to react in a natural way against a threat of, against our life. And now that's number one, and I'll let you respond. But number two, I am also of the mindset that forgiveness is also, we believe that it's instant. Popcorn, 30 seconds or a minute, right? Forgiveness, 30 seconds, 10 seconds. I think we gauge our closeness to God or Jesus based upon how quickly we forgive, which is a problem from a psychological standpoint because we don't ever deal with the trauma. We jump right over dealing with the trauma into I forgive you. So I'm going to say that, and then we're going to talk about pastors and their responsibility and it being shirked. But let's deal with it. What are your thoughts on the forgiveness topic?
So, two things. I think we need to look at what forgiveness actually means and what forgiveness actually is. And the reason why I say that is how you say, is it crippling us as a Black community in regards to the oppression and the things of that nature in our world? So the definition of forgiveness is the action or process of forgiving or being forgiven. Now, the situation behind that is we need to look at what does forgiveness really mean to me and you and what it means for us as a people. Like, I'll give you an example. So let's just say you having problems in your relationship with your significant other, your spouse, whatever the situation may be. They may have wronged you and you chose to forgive them. Now, depending on the level of wrong or how you were wronged and the way it was wronged, you could say, I'll forgive you, you better not ever do it again. Right? Mm-hmm. But we're living in a time where we are consistently facing being come against, being exiled. I mean, just the inequality, just the level of just so much, So I feel like this. I feel like when it comes to unforgiveness, I can still forgive you, not for your sake, but for my sake. And the reason why I say for my sake is because I have to be better. And when I say I have to be better, because it just shows me, it shows how powerful I am over myself and over my emotions and confident in my abilities that you even feel like that you had to stoop that low. So I feel like what it does is it exposes two things. You can never ever control what people do, but you can respond. You can control how you respond to what they do. And so I feel like, so to kind of unpack it from the white supremacist perspective, I would say my forgiveness would be like, you know what? I may be quote unquote turning my forgiveness is teaching my children to be like, be aware of that. My forgiveness is, or my turn the other cheek is, I'm gonna educate you so long. I'm gonna make sure that I educate myself so much to where I become. They can't deny who I am as a black man. You know what I'm saying? Because I want to even look at The Rock. Can I bring an example?
Yeah.
Let's look at The Rock. Dwayne Johnson, his brother, The Rock. Dwayne Johnson, he was a wrestler. But I've noticed the more and more he's progressed in his career, we know that his father is black, and we know that his mother is Samoan, Polynesian descent, right? So technically, this man is a black man. But if you look at his movies, they try to whiten him and whiten him and whiten him. So anything that tends to be right and okay with them, they'll try to whiten.
Yeah.
But anything that's black, like they'll just try to, discard or disgrace or whatever the situation may be. Let's even look at the Disney princesses. How all the princesses, the white princesses, were naturally princesses. But even Princess Diana, the princess in the Fall movie, she had to marry a white man to be a princess.
Well,
what kind of narrative is that painting to our children? So what I'm saying is, I'm bringing it back in the context of my forgiveness. My turn the other cheek is to really truly embody my daughter, build up to really and emphasize to my family of who they are, not based on what other people say or that community thinks about us.
Well, okay, so
because there's power in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess it depends on what side of the fence you want to sit on, right? I mean, we understand conceptually. This is for everybody listening. Yeah, I understand the concept of forgiveness, right? We understand that. But I think where I'm at is I'm now witnessing a society that, and I'm going to say this and then I'm going to follow it up. They don't give a damn about forgiveness. They don't give a damn about it. They don't respect it. They don't care. And then, of course, we go back to, well, that should not be your focus, right? We're in the world, but we're not of the world. That would be the natural progression. Of course, the world's not. But where I'm at is I'm ready to go into the temple and turn over some tables. You follow me? I think we paint Jesus, if we're going to talk about him, and I know that there's a lot of people listening that say, well, no, it was a story from an Egyptian story. They mimicked Jesus. They mimicked, the birth, and I understand all that. But for the context of this conversation, right, I think we have romanticized God, Jesus, religion as just love. You follow me?
Right.
And see,
the false love narrative.
That to me is the problem, because when your enemy knows that no matter what they do, they're going to receive love in response to their brutality, what's to prevent them from acting in a brutal fashion? You understand what I'm saying? Like, I'll give you, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at. Every pastor in the United States needs to tell their congregation, go buy a gun. This is where I'm at. Carry, conceal. If you are not a felon, if you can legitimately arm yourself, go buy a gun, go to the gun range, take a self-defense course, arm yourself. We have a right. The NRA, which is arming, well, I'll say this, they're not arming. You have white hate groups that are using the right to bear arms to arm themselves. Now, we will be perceived as a militia, and to be honest with you, I don't have a problem with that. Because if you don't, it's kind of like the Deacons of Defense, right, from the 60s. If you don't believe that there is a counter threat to your aggression, the aggressor is going to become or feel more emboldened, right? Now, granted, I know that was a quick soundbite, right? And there's an immense debate that can take place. But I feel like we're being sheared or prepared for slaughter in the name of vengeance is mine. But go ahead. What are your thoughts?
I would say to that particularly, from a logical perspective, that makes sense. You know what I mean? To have pastors say, you know, y'all need to arm yourselves, y'all need to protect yourselves, right? But from a spiritual perspective, I mean, we are in a war. We know that we are in a war. Spiritual wickedness in high places, right? So if we know that we are in a war, just as natural as this is a physical war, this is a spiritual war. And the only reason why I keep going back to the spiritual side, because I kind of want to add balance and context. I'm gonna keep it real, man. I would gladly go get me a gun. I'm gonna keep it real. I'm gonna keep it a $1.50. The kind of world that we live in, and that's just not even just from the white man. It's from the black man, from the black people that don't even value other black people.
Mm-hmm.
Just people in general that don't care about. It's all about me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I would, just to protect myself, protect my family.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, man, and I want to preface this in the right way. I would say personally, going back to the original statement that you made, my brother, about, you know, hey, this is where I am with it. I feel like the reason why that we've been taught, or I ain't gonna say the reason why, but a lot of our pastors, and we had this conversation off air, but I really believe that a lot of our pastors are not just so gung-ho, black. This is what is because, one, they grew up in an era to where they had to be submissive because their parents taught them, you don't fight back in that way. That's not how you fight back. And unfortunately, it has crippled level of action in the black church. Like, a lot of the black leaders don't emphasize that. They just want to be separate from that. You know what I'm saying? They want to.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. You know. And I really. I mean, they literally lived in an era to where racism was so blatant, to where it was just kind of like, we do our thing here, and that's just how it is. Blah blah blah. But I mean, like I even mentioned to you before, like, we're acting like we're surprised that white people are racist. Like, you know what I'm saying? We acting like we're surprised. Like, if your manager, your white manager, female, male, came to you and called you a nigga straight to your face, and, you know, always said you always, you know, never gave you praise, whatever the situation may be, we're acting like we're surprised. Like, they would act that way or act out of that fashion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shocker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, the situation is that a lot of us in these black churches, in that same relevance, I felt like a lot of us have taught to be
passive,
yeah. It's like a super passive.
Because I feel like our spirituality is judged on how strong we are passively. I mean, to be honest, I mean, to me, it's like, well, you're more enlightened, you're more in tune, your soul, your spirit, you're more aligning yourself with the principles of that particular teaching, when no matter how oppressive or how violent the act is, you respond in a meek tone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like we've been attacked so many times. It's nothing new. And I hate to say that, it's true. I feel like we've become desensitized to, you know, the level of injustices in our community. It's almost like we expect it. Like, we know that we be getting abused by the police and there's police brutality. We know that, but the world's just finding out. And even then, they still don't want to take responsibility for it.
Well, the world's always known. The world has always known. I understand the context, right? There's cell phones.
Yeah, the context of, wow, this is a real problem. Or if a white guy's hanging with a black guy and they both get stopped, they see the level of treatment that's different. If it was just an all-white group of people versus a mixed group of people, or just all black group of kids. You know what I mean? Just all these different things. And
absolutely.
So I would say to that, the responsibility. I would say it's not. I would say, I'm gonna say it's not as much as it should be the church's responsibility. I feel like in certain situations, why are we looking to them.
I'm going to tell you why, and I'm glad you brought that up. Great segue. Why should it be up to them? Go ahead.
No. The reason why I say why we look to them is because I feel like we for so long we've looked for a savior, so to speak, and it's like, okay, this guy is the closest person to God, right? So this person is the closest person connected to God. Then technically they should be giving us the blueprint, the something of how to defeat these enemies, how to defeat these demons, how to come against these white devils, right?
Right.
So, I in my opinion, I feel like even though I'm going there to be spiritually fed, I'm going to these churches to be spiritually fed, there's still a level of responsibility that I need to have on my end. Just to say, you know what, I can't. Go ahead, brother. I'll let you go ahead.
I mean, first of all, I don't disagree, right? I think where you and I are is we are kind of splitting hairs a little bit, and that's okay, right? Because to me, and we talked about this off air, when the comment was made about pastors and them not being vocal, and then you said, well, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And my response was, that's the problem, because there should be no behind the scenes, right? If we're getting murdered and slaughtered in public on national TV, right, in living color, behind the scenes should not even be a question. We should know the pastor's first name, last name, address of the church, phone number, everything, right? It shouldn't be a mystery, right? And to further add to that, and I agree with you on the one hand, we're looking for the savior, the person that's going to lead us, right? But on the second hand, we already have that. If you have a pastor, and again, we said this off air, if you have a pastor that commands the attention every Sunday for an hour, and they have upwards of 100,000 people that find their way to that church every Sunday, that is the leader. That is the voice. That is the person that is supposed to take this exposure that he or she has to these thousands of people, and they're supposed to rally them. You meet me at instead of Bible study or church today. How about that? Instead of church today, I'm going to get in my car, and you're going to get in your car, and you're going to follow me to City Hall today. And we're going to have a 10,000 car caravan to City Hall. And we're going to park, and we're going to block the streets. We're going to honk our horns. I'm going to get out, and I'm going to conduct my sermon on the steps of City Hall. You want to make a difference? The answers are in front of us. But see, because of comfort and convenience, and because of the dollar and not wanting to offend, or these black pastors don't want to lose that check. See, that's what the real issue is. The answer is simple. It's not complicated. It's only complicated when you don't want to answer it. You don't want to deal with it. You don't want to solve it. That's when shit gets complicated. You hear that? Well, there's more to it than that. No, there's not. It ain't more to it when you are there an hour and you are eloquently spitting the gospel. You're going from Hebrew to Greek to Latin. You might even throw in some Spanish for your Spanish members. See, that's not complicated. Right. But telling you to stand up and stand with Black Lives Matter is. Telling you to invite the mayor outside of campaign time so we can all address him is too difficult. Telling the police chief, we need to see you this Sunday at church because we got a problem we need to address, is too complicated.
I agree, man. I agree with you 100%, man. I feel like there's a level. I mean, there's a lot that we have to peel back in this. And the reason why I say that is because you got to think about a lot of things. So when you brought up about the Black Lives Matter, now a lot of this stuff, and I'm gonna jump into my conspiracy theory bag, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of these institutions, like it's all about the divide and conquer thing, right? And the reason why I say that is because the more and more I can give people, and I'm not saying this about the church at all, but this is, but a lot of these institutions, like the Black Lives Matter and the Black Girls Rock and all that is funded by white people.
You think Black Girls Rock is funded by by white people? I don't know.
Absolutely. That because they and the reason why I say that is because they have a Black Girls Rock show on BET.
And BET is owned by Viacom. Yeah, okay, I see.
Right. That's the reason why they can't, even on BET, that's why they can't even say what they want to say on BET.
Right.
Think about it.
Yeah, I got it.
You know what I'm saying?
I get it.
So a lot of these black this, black that, black empowerment, black. A lot of white people, and I hate to say this, but it's true. A lot of black people in general have sold out for the check. So if we're going to talk about the church and the leadership that sold out for the check and the offering, let's talk about the black people in general that have sold out for the check.
But isn't the church supposed to be the integrity? And it's supposed to be the barometer for integrity, right?
Absolutely.
And that's supposed to be
I agree.
And so if we can't even challenge them, and if they are gone, if they've sold out, then why are we still going to their Sunday services? If you and I have realized that this is the situation, that the black church and the pastors have all predominantly sold out, why do we keep going?
I feel like we keep going because there's only certain battles that we care to fight.
No, but my point is this, though. If your own pastor...
You asked me a question, and I'm going to tell you my answer. You may not agree, you may disagree, and that's fine.
Got it.
But I really believe that the reason why we keep going to these churches is because we are so unhappy with our present lives that we would rather get more information on how we can maximize our afterlife. I hate to say it, but it's true. And another thing is, I really believe the fact that there's only certain battles that we care to fight.
Facts.
We have been desensitized to the level of racism and police brutality. We have, because we've been going through that stuff. If you think about it, who are the main people hollering racism? It ain't black people. It's white people.
Right. So, and I know we're coming to towards the end here, and we got to have a second. We got to have a part two. But go ahead.
But I'm just saying. Let's really think about this in context of, man, we're so upset. Right. We have every right to be upset. Right. We definitely need to organize. We need to come together as a group, as a people, as a community, in our churches, in our organizational groups, in our homes, all these different things. Yes, we do. I do agree with it 100%. But I do believe as black people that we have been so accustomed and so used to the level of injustice that it's almost natural and innate for us to not respond.
And that's a good point. And then that leads me to this. So is the black church even needed? And if yes, why?
I believe the black church is needed because there's a lot of pastors that have failed their community, and they failed in the level of leadership. Have you ever
Well, if they failed, then why are they needed?
Listen, this is what I'm going to tell you, though. This is what I'm going to go with that. It's almost saying, if you're so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. That's what I mean. That's what I mean by that.
That is fair. I respect that.
Meaning as you're so focused on the afterlife and all these other things that you're not even worried about the people that are struggling around you. Now, I'm not saying that these pastors may not have good intentions. I'm not saying a lot of these pastors may not even haven't done things for the community and different things like that, or even tried to do things but I feel like a lot of them have failed. They have, and they don't even realize that they failed.
I don't know if they honestly. I think they do know. I'm going to keep it real with you because I'm going to tell you why. I hear you, and I know it's all supposition, right? But I have a very difficult time believing that you can study the history of theology going back thousands of years. You have this high-powered intellectual component to yourself. You have perception, and you can articulate, right? What's wrong in the world. You follow me? From a spiritual lens. It doesn't matter. They can tell you what's wrong. They can tell you why it's wrong, and they can tell you this is the solution. Christ or God or this. But you can't turn that same high-power perception on yourself and recognize that you are contributing to the issue right, of the oppression and the financial rape and ruin of your own community. That's the issue
Right.
that I have a problem with.
Why though? But let's look at why. Let's look at how the black church was born. The black church was born from a slave community.
Facts.
So they already have the mentality of being slaves. So when you feel like you need help or you can't help yourself, that's a slave mentality. That's a very poverty slave, foster kid, I need somebody to save me, or I didn't know what a father was until I met a father mentality. And I hate to say that, but it's true. Until I learned who my identity was in Jesus Christ and who I am, then I began to realize the power that was within me. And I still believe that it's needed because we're suffering the most. Our community. So, and I truly believe this. I truly believe that there is a generation of people that's providing balance, that God is raising up to provide a balance. You have the balance of spirituality with how much you need to know who you are within yourself.
Okay, all right. Look,
a huge church. There's a huge church. There's actually a couple of churches, but there's a couple of huge churches in Dallas and in Houston. And this is just from Texas. I don't really know for anywhere else. But literally, they have black Jesus pictures. You know what I'm saying? Which are predominantly black churches, and they give back to the black community.
And I believe that. I see. You know, and again, I'm not talking about the exceptions. I'm talking about the rule, and that's and the exceptions are important.
Right. I'm just saying there is some type of level of progression. So as much as we're going to harp on the white supremacists, we can also talk about what are the progressive steps that are taken that are moving forward. I'm sorry, dog. I gotta cut you off just from a time perspective, because we really gotta have a part two, and I want to pick up on the progressive. Yeah, absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely. I think black people are starting to wake up. You got the woke movement, right? Everybody's woke, right? Mm-hmm. When actually they really sleep. They still sleep. And the reason why I say that is because you may be woke mentally, but even spiritually, you still have a mentality. You still have a very slave mentality. You ain't even woke with the foods you eat. How come you want to be woke when it comes to religion, but you still are choosing to eat foods that keep you in a slave mentality? I get it. Your mind correct. That's a simple thing.
I get it, and I want to keep talking. I know we are out of time. I get it, man.
And I'm guilty. I'm guilty of it because I'm overweight myself. But I'm just saying in the sense of how much I need to progress.
I get it.
It starts within before it goes outward. And I'll on that.
All right, man. Well, look, man, I appreciate you, Ram. We're gonna come back. We're gonna pick this up, man. We gotta have a part two on this because there's a lot.
We're gonna have a part two, my brother. Thank you for having me on the show, man.
Okay.
Shout out to all my We Ain't Scared listeners out there. Shout out to all my believers out there. And, just to leave it out there, people, we got to do better. We have to, But in order to be better, we have to start at home.
That's right, good Reverend Doctor. So
that's too much over there.
So, yeah, again, I want to thank you for checking out another podcast of We Ain't Scared Talk. My name is A1 with Remy, the Reverend Pastor Bishop, good Reverend. He's closer to God than Jesus right now. Look,
But let me interject. Hey man, if y'all want some more media from me, man, y'all check me out at determined2win_media on Instagram. If y'all want to follow me on Facebook, it's Determined to Win Facebook page. Also, you can look me up at Remy Marcel on Instagram, Twitter, Determined to Win _media. Y'all check me out on all those social platforms. Brother, it's a pleasure being on the show today. And
appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right, y'all. You heard it here. And as always, we ain't scared. Right?
Wow.